Today we're doing a buying guide of my favorite handheld of all time, the PSP. We're gonna go over which consoles you need. We'll go over all of them, trust me, including the Go. We'll talk about UMDs. We'll talk about the memory cards that you should look at, and of course the games. And I know you're gonna be wondering about this, the modding of the system, if you should do it, if it's worth it. We'll go over I'd like to say 5 to 10 must-have games you should get, and also they're gonna be pretty affordable too if you do go the physical route. And last but not least, we'll talk about modding the console. Stay tuned, this is gonna be a fun one. So first off, we're gonna talk consoles. I'll go over each console model that there is, from the FAT, the OG 1000, the 2000, the 3000, and the Go. Starting with the PSP 1000, the OG, the FAT, this was the one that started it all. It's definitely bulkier. I will say it feels more premium. It's a heavier device. It has a switch for the UMD drive. It does, however, only have 32 megabytes of RAM, which is less than the other variants that came out later. Doesn't affect any of the games by any means. There's no like, oh, PSP Slim Enhanced, but it might affect some games or emulators on the console. All right, the PSP 2000, the first slim variant. I love the PSP 2000. It has a better screen. It's a lighter device. I will say it doesn't feel as premium, but you do have 64 megabytes of RAM, which will probably help on some emulators that require a little more power for the console. This right here is the 2009 Madden 09 Special Edition. Comes in a blue colorway. Great looking PSP in my opinion. The 2000's awesome if you can pick it up for a good price, but ultimately I think the 3000 makes a little bit more sense if you are gonna be out there PSP shopping. And the PSP 2000 also introduced video out, so you are able to play your PSP games on your TV or watch any PSP movies on your TV, which was super cool back in the day. Now we have the PSP 3000, which is my favorite of the bunch. As you can see, the PlayStation button is shaped a little differently. That's really one of the only aesthetic differences that you'll notice on the console, but this one's in great condition. You're not gonna notice a huge difference from the body style or the weight of the console, but huge fan of the 3000s, love the screen, and of course you still have that 64 megabytes of RAM. I think the screen does look a touch better. I don't have any of the specs for that, but I think it is technically a bit better of a screen. Now let's talk about the PSP Go, which is an all-digital PSP. It's a different form factor. I like the design on it, how it slides up. I think it's nice, it feels premium, but you can't play any of your UMDs on this system, which back in 09 was crazy because most people back then were not doing digital only purchases online. I mean, most people still had tons of physical media and you couldn't use your UMDs, which really sucked and I think hurt the PSP Go. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter because of modding systems. If you pick one of these up, it's great because you can just dump all your games on there. The Go does have 16 gigs of internal storage, which is nice, but keep in mind if you're shopping for one of these that it does use a different memory card. Even though my Japanese PSP right here, the 3000, is modded, I do have some physical games, so any of you guys that are looking to talk, physical games and collecting for physical games, I'm gonna break down what the UMDs look like, and if you're interested in what PSP UMD movies look like, I have a video on my channel where I show my collection. I have like 80-something PSP movies, so yeah, if you wanna check that format out, it's dope, and then I have a YouTube short that also shows kind of what it looks like to watch a movie on a PSP, but yeah, let's check out the UMDs. Right here we have one of the best games on the console. Let's start with that one. GTA Liberty City Stories. So much smaller. I mean, if you've never seen a PSP game or case in person, they're definitely smaller than PS3 cases, for example, or PS4, and they're slimmer. So on the back, you have some art, just like any traditional case. It'll show you some info about how much memory is needed, and then the multiplayer modes that they have. This is ad hoc, so no actual online play, just you and someone with a PSP right next to you. So let's pop it open. This one's CIB, so GTA used to be really cool back in the day and give a full instruction booklet and a map. Maybe we'll get GTA 6 in, I don't know, maybe the next 5-10 years, who knows. But right here we have the UMD for GTA Liberty City Stories, and this is what they look like. The UMDs are super tiny discs. I mean, if you've ever, the closest thing I could really kind of compare it to would be like a GameCube disc. And even these are smaller than GameCube discs, but yeah, I mean, they're super small. And this is what the universal media disc looks like, the UMD. If it's a game, it'll have the game icon there. Like I said earlier, if you check out my PSP movie video, you'll see that they have a movie icon there instead of the game. But yeah, these are what the UMDs look like. I'm gonna be honest, not a huge fan. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Not a big fan of the UMD format, at least in the modern day, just because if you do try to play a physical game, it is going to be very loud. It's gonna take up more battery because the disc is constantly spinning. And it can get kind of annoying just because it's loud and is gonna most likely drain your battery more just because the disc is spinning, right? So, I mean, at the time it was super cool, man, to have a disc where you could watch movies, you could play games on the go and take them with you. Interesting format. I mean, this was the only thing that the UMD was used for, so it wasn't very universal. I highly recommend modding your console so you can just download your games, but we'll talk about that later. Now we're gonna talk memory cards. This is gonna somewhat get into the modding that I talked about earlier, where if you keep your console stock, if you don't mod the console, you really don't need a ton of memory just because you'll be saving games and that's essentially it, right? Where it's not gonna take up a ton. Right here we have a 16 gig memory card. I bought this PSP when I went to Japan and this memory card there. 16 gigs is solid. For a modded console, it's decent because I can have an alright amount of games installed on here. But these are what the memory cards look like. Memory Stick Pro Duo. I think they look pretty cool, and back in the day, I mean, these were pretty pricey. A 16 gig would have been hella expensive back in the day. But yeah, this is what the memory card looks like, and it was really cool. Let me show you the one on my 2000. Is that they actually had a bunch of different colors for these. And I thought it was really, really cool back in the day, man. So check this out. This one's only 1 gig. This was the Madden 09 bundle that came out back in the day, but it had a blue memory card here too, and this is only 1 gig. This PSP 2000 is not modded, so honestly 1 gigabyte is totally fine. It'll store as many saves as I possibly need if I am playing physical games. But like I said, if you're going the modded route, you're definitely gonna want to have a larger memory card. Now the part of the video that you've probably been like, dude, when the hell is this guy gonna talk about modding the PSP? So that part's now. We're gonna talk about putting custom firmware on your PSP, what you can do with a modded PSP, and then I'm not gonna make a tutorial on how to mod your PSP. There's a ton of them out there. I'll put a couple in the description of a couple dudes here on YouTube who make really simple tutorials that you literally cannot mess up. Modding a PSP has got to be one of the easiest consoles on the planet to mod. The Vita now is pretty easy because you don't even need a computer now, but stay tuned. Let's talk about the modded PSP. I'm gonna break down what you can do on a modded PSP. There's a ton of stuff you can do. I'm only gonna show you a couple of the main things and the main reasons that people do it. So first off, you can download any game ever released for the PSP. And I mean, like I said on here, and as you saw, there's a 16 gig memory card. So I can store a decent amount of games, but I do have to go back here and there and like remove a game here, add a new one, that kind of thing, especially on some of the larger titles that came out towards the end of the life cycle. As you know, on my channel, I definitely support collecting games, physical media, that kind of thing. On the PSP, I really don't, man, to be real, just because the UMD is kind of a pain in the ass. They break super easy, they scratch. I'm just not a big fan. It's loud when you play it. I'd rather just download the game. So that's perk number 1 of a modded PSP, is downloading any game you want. And then next step is definitely gonna be the emulators. Right here, I have a GBA emulator. I'll pop in there and show you what we can do on here real quick. Okay, so here we are on the GBA emulator. As you can see, there really isn't too much on here. There's a Metal Slug Advance. A couple of the games I think came already downloaded on this emulator, but the main ones I have are, Pokemon Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ruby, Sapphire. GBA games are crazy expensive, and it's nice being able to play them on a PSP. Right now we'll load up Pokemon Emerald and you'll be able to see how it looks. The display looks good. It's nice to have save states because it's on an emulator. You can have multiple save states. If you're a shiny hunter, I guess you could do that on here. I'm not that deep into it, but it runs well, it's smooth. One thing I kind of want to mention is, with the PSP 1000 having less RAM on more intensive emulators that maybe are not a GBA, you probably want to go with the 2000 or 3000 just for the additional RAM, so emulators run a little smoother on the system. But for GBA, you're totally cool with the 1000. Like 32 megabytes of RAM is going to run GBA no problem. The PSP, whether it's modded or not, can play PS1 games. So this is on the old 2000. I only have one PS1 game on here right now, and that's Harvest Moon Back to Nature. I loved Harvest Moon as a kid, but PS1 games on the PSP run perfect. They work great, and It's literally like having a portable PS1, which is fantastic. I mean, the PSP's whole idea was basically to be a portable PS2, but to me, it always kind of felt like a PSP 1.5, if that makes any sense. Now let's talk games. The PSP was actually supported and cared about by Sony, unlike the Vita. RIP to the Vita. I'll have a buying guide out for the Vita eventually too, maybe in the next couple of weeks, because the Vita is great. But in regards to the PSP, let's talk games. PSP games that you're gonna need, I mean, there's a ton. So if you're going the physical route, luckily PSP games are pretty cheap, pretty affordable. You can find them CIB. Loose for even cheaper if you're not tripping off having the case. But let's talk some of those games that you're gonna need. I love Daxter. That was a fantastic game where Daxter was by himself. I think Jack was locked up or something during Jak 2, and it was in between that, but Daxter is an awesome game, one of my favorite PSP games of all time. You have Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. There's also the Metal Gear Acid games. I know people aren't as big a fan of the Acid games just due to it being kind of a turn-based RPG, but Peace Walker's dope. The graphics are absolutely insane for a handheld console, especially when it came out. You have Final Fantasy Crisis Core, another banger of a game. I have Crisis Core loose somewhere, but that's a fantastic PSP game. It's a must-have, no doubt. You definitely need it on your system or in your collection. Any of the GTAs, so GTA Liberty City Stories, like I showed earlier, is fantastic. It's kind of similar to GTA 3, but having that on the go, especially for when it came out, was wild. GTA Vice City Stories, similar in that sense, where an open world GTA game on the go was just crazy for the time, and it's a great game. Of course, you have a couple God of Wars on PSP, and in my opinion, they run just as good as the PS2 games, so God of War on PSP, gotta have it. Persona 3, so if you're a Persona fan, you got your Persona fix on the PSP. Twisted Metal, another PlayStation exclusive on the PSP, so can't go wrong with Twisted Metal. You have Tekken, so if you're a fighting fan, there's Tekken. There's a good Soul Calibur game here on PSP. There's Killzone Liberation. It's not an FPS like the console counterpart. Not really my thing. It's an alright game. I personally like the FPS Killzones better, but still dope to have a Killzone on the handheld. And last but not least, as a must-have PSP game, would be Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo on the PSP, graphics are fantastic. They're stunning, especially for a handheld and when it came out. And it really gives you that console experience on the go, which is what the PSP promised. So finally, let's talk about if you should actually buy a PSP. Now, if you're wanting to get one of these just for PSP games and you're not really caring about playing on physical hardware, there's some great PSP emulators out there where you can just download the game, dude. It'll look good and work on a lot of phones. It'll work on very basic computers. So if you just want to emulate PSP games, you're good to go. But if you're really itching to play on physical hardware, I recommend personally picking up a Japanese PSP. The only thing you'll have to do is swap the X and O around if you put custom firmware on it, because it's reversed in Japan, because they're usually in better condition, honestly. I think the Japanese PSPs are usually like brand new practically. But if you can find one local and like OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, something like that for a good price, I'd say sub 80 bucks if it's a bundle is cool. Maybe if it's really pristine, like 80 bucks is a good price. I'll probably have a picture of like some eBay comps over here, something for like the 2,000 and the 3,000. If you want the Go, I mean, you pretty much have to mod that thing just because it's digital only. If you have the 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 and you're rocking the physical, you're good. But if you get the Go, you're pretty much gonna have to mod it and put custom firmware on it and download your games. If you like portables, if you like owning consoles and playing on the real hardware, I think the PSP is awesome. I mean, if you want to go real old school, you can still download some music on it, watch some movies, and you can put photos on there. I mean, it really was ahead of its time. The PSP had an internet browser. There was just so much you could do on it. And this was before iPhones came out. I think Blackberries were probably still the big thing. And of course, Androids weren't around. So it really was kind of the first multimedia machine that you could take on the go. I love the PSP. Let me know what you guys think. I think they're still worth buying. I know there'll probably be some people in the comments who are like, oh bro, I don't know, why don't you just buy a PS Vita? Buy a Vita then if you want, man. Buy a Vita. You can play, pretty much any PSP game through Adrenaline on a Vita, but that's a story for another video. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you soon with another video.